4 billion years of trial and error, and this is what we got. A planet full of creatures that shouldn't work, but somehow do. Welcome to Nature's Bad Ideas Department. If evolution had a corporate office, this is where the weird stuff gets approved. You know, the designs that start with, "Hey, what if we give a mammal a duck's bill?" Yeah, sure, stamp it. Ship it to Australia. For billions of years, nature's been running one big experiment. No design team, no version control, and definitely no refunds. The process? Simple. Mutation throws spaghetti at the wall, and natural selection checks if it sticks. But every now and then, something ridiculous actually works. A fish that breathes air, a reptile that grows feathers, a monkey that learns to tax itself. Oops, that last one's us. See, evolution doesn't plan success, it stumbles into it. It's a blind sculptor carving with a chainsaw. And somehow, it made everything from the shark's perfection to the flamingo's pink disaster. The results range from genius to complete biological stand-up comedy. And yet, that's the beauty of it. Every mistake is a masterpiece that didn't know what it was doing. Welcome to the world's oldest innovation lab, where failure is the strategy. Let's take a look inside evolution's filing cabinet and meet the mistakes that refuse to die. Every masterpiece has its flaws, but in evolution's gallery, the flaws are the masterpieces. Welcome to the part of biology that looks like it was designed by committee after a long lunch break. Let's start with the giraffe, evolution's failed attempt at a periscope. This creature's neck stretches over 2 meters long, and yet its blood vessels take a scenic detour worthy of a lost GPS. The nerve that controls the giraffe's voice, instead of going straight from brain to throat, loops all the way down to the chest, circles the heart, and comes back up again. That's an extra 5 meters of wiring. If Apple built like this, your phone charger would wrap around the planet. The reason? This nerve path was laid down in fish hundreds of millions of years ago. Back then, brain and heart were neighbors, short commute. As necks evolved, the nerve just kept taking the old route. So now, the giraffe carries a 5-meter reminder that biology never learned cable management. Next, the panda. A creature that proves you don't need good ideas, just stubborn ones. Pandas live almost entirely on bamboo, a plant that's hard, low in nutrients, and requires a specialized hand to grip. Which would be great if pandas actually had thumbs. They don't. Instead, evolution improvised, turning a wrist bone into a fake thumb. It's clumsy, inefficient, and barely works. But it does the job. And that's enough for evolution. It's basically duct-tape biology. Ugly, but functional. And yet, it survived millions of years. Proof that natural selection doesn't reward perfection, it rewards good enough to not die today. And now, the main attraction. Us. The human spine. A marvel of engineering, if that engineer was drunk, blind, and on a deadline. Originally built for walking on all fours, the spine was never meant to hold a 2-legged primate upright. Evolution didn't design a new chassis, it just tilted the old one forward and said, close enough. The result? Back pain, herniated discs, sciatica, a biological apology letter that begins at age 30. Every time your back hurts, remember, that's evolution reminding you it didn't plan for office jobs. And the list goes on. Feet too small for the body, an eye wired backward, forcing light to pass through nerves before hitting the retina, the Achilles tendon, a spring so fragile that half of humanity breaks it before dying of anything else. These are not signs of genius. They're relics of survival. Evolution's lazy patches, patches that somehow became permanent features. Every species is a rough draft that accidentally got published. And somehow, the critics, that's us, are still here to complain about it. So next time your back hurts, or you drop your phone because your thumb's in the wrong place, remember, it could be worse. You could be a giraffe, trying to clear its throat. Coming up next, the Frankensteins of biology, when evolution stopped choosing and started mixing genres. If evolution had a lab, this is the part where it spilled the coffee, on the gene sequencer. Welcome to the biological equivalent of fan fiction, the creatures that look like nature lost a bet. Let's start with the platypus, a creature so confusing that when scientists first found one, they thought it was fake. Imagine receiving a specimen that looks like someone stitched a duck's bill onto a beaver's body and threw in venom for fun. It lays eggs like a reptile, produces milk like a mammal, and hunts with electroreception, like a shark. In other words, evolution just hit randomize and went with the first result. It's not elegant, but it works. The platypus has survived for over 100 million years, proof that being weird is sometimes the best survival strategy. And then there's the axolotl, the salamander that never grew up. It was supposed to metamorphose into a land animal, but it said, no thanks, stayed underwater forever, and somehow thrived. It's basically evolution's Peter Pan, forever young, forever confused. The secret? Regeneration. Lose a leg, it grows back. Lose a tail, an eye, a bit of brain. It'll just respawn like a video game character. Scientists study axolotls to understand how they do it. Because while humans fear wrinkles, axolotls fear nothing. Imagine breaking your arm, and your body just Control plus Z's the problem. And then, there's the creature that makes all others look boring, the octopus. This isn't an animal. It's a thought experiment wrapped in tentacles. It can change color, shape, texture, squeeze through spaces smaller than its own eyeball, and open jars from the inside. It has 9 brains, 8 in its arms, 1 in its head. Each arm acts independently, like little chaotic employees that occasionally check in with the boss. Imagine your limbs having free will. That's not evolution, that's a horror movie with good PR. If aliens ever visit Earth, they might not be surprised to find humans. But the octopus, that's where they'd say, wait, they made it here too? Before birds became sky dancers, they were walking lizards with a midlife crisis.
It couldn't fly well. It just flapped and hoped for the best.
Archaeopteryx, the half-dinosaur, half-bird prototype. Feathers, teeth, claws, tail. A prehistoric experiment in flight that barely worked. It couldn't fly well. It couldn't walk elegantly. It just flapped and hoped for the best. And somehow, that hopeless design became the foundation for every eagle, crow, and pigeon alive today. Sometimes, the line between failure and perfection is just persistence. These are the misfits, the ones that shouldn't have worked, the ones that broke every rule and then rewrote them. They remind us that evolution isn't an artist, it's a mad scientist. And sometimes, madness makes masterpieces. Next, the mammalian revolution, when the monsters went extinct and the warm-blooded underdogs took over. Nature is a genius, a chaotic, half-drunk genius. She spends millions of years designing the perfect predator. Razor teeth, explosive muscles, then gives a peacock a butt full of feathers. So big, it can't even run from a dog. Welcome to the beauty of stupidity, where evolution said, who needs survival when you can look fabulous? The peacock, a bird so obsessed with style, it turned itself into a walking fashion risk. That tail isn't for flying, it's for flirting. Because in the grand game of life, apparently, glitter beats gravity. Then there's the narwhal, a whale that grew a single giant tooth, just to flex. Not a weapon, not a tool, just dental art. Imagine evolving for millions of years to look like you lost a duel with a unicorn. Or take the deer, evolution's headbanging champion. The bigger the antlers, the better the chances of impressing someone. Because nothing says strong genes like chronic neck pain. Sometimes evolution isn't about survival of the fittest, it's survival of the flashiest. These creatures live on the edge, one mutation away from disaster. But evolution has a soft spot for nonsense. When logic sleeps, beauty wakes, loud, glittery, and usually about to get eaten. And before we laugh too hard at the peacock, let's remember, we literally invented glitter. We are evolution's final masterpiece of stupidity. Maybe that's what makes us beautiful. Up next, the mammalian revolution, when the weird got serious. 66 million years ago, nature hit the reset button. The dinosaurs checked out, and the mammals checked in. Tiny, nervous, mostly nocturnal, these fur-covered nobodies suddenly found themselves with an entire planet to ruin. And oh, did they run with it. Meet Platypus, a dog-shaped creature who looked at the ocean and thought, yeah, I can work with that. It waddled into the water, kept going, and after a few million years became a 40-ton opera singer. In a few evolutionary blinks, mammals that once hid from sea monsters became the sea monsters. Toothed whales hunted like wolves underwater. Baleen whales filtered oceans with mouths the size of buses. And humans think career changes are hard. Basilosaurus, 20 meters of hungry irony, a whale with teeth, because evolution was clearly bored that week. Imagine a serpent, a crocodile, and a torpedo having a family reunion. Then imagine one of them decided to sing. Meanwhile, on land, evolution kept getting drunker. Behold Andrewsarchus, a creature the size of a horse with the skull of a bear and the ancestry of a sheep. Yes, technically it was a cousin of whales. Proof that even family trees have awkward branches. While some descendants learned grace, others perfected chaos. One clan became oceanic giants, another became nightmares with hooves. And then, the Ice Age gave us the drama queens, the saber-toothed cats. Evolution apparently decided that normal teeth weren't cinematic enough. So it gave some cats fangs longer than kitchen knives and muscles built for the single perfect kill. They weren't efficient, they were theatrical. They lived fast, hunted hard, and when the climate changed, their very specialization became their downfall. A tragic, photogenic end. And somewhere in all that chaos, small, clever mammals began to climb. They developed grasping hands, stereoscopic vision, and a kind of restless curiosity that kept breaking things just to see what happened next. Meet the primates, evolution's prototype for problem solving. They weren't the biggest, they weren't the fastest, but their brains started to imagine things that weren't there. Which is how we learned fire, language, and eventually how to waste entire afternoons on viral nonsense. Brains do strange things when they have time. The mammalian revolution wasn't a takeover, it was a slow, relentless remix. from furry scavengers to architects of entire worlds. And in that rise, mammals inherited something subtle but powerful: flexibility. Warm blood, sustained activity, parental investment. Traits that let them explore new niches, new diets, new strategies. And also, apparently, the capacity to invent terrible ideas faster than the planet can forget them. Look at the fossil record. It reads like a highlight reel of experimentation. Some entries brilliant, some absurd, many spectacularly unnecessary. But when a clumsy, warm-blooded creature tried something new and it stuck hard. And once mammals found the openings left by extinction, they pushed through them, multiplied, diversified, and kept adapting. So what does revolution mean here? It wasn't a single event. It was cumulative change, small shifts, ecological opportunities, and the stubborn persistence of lineages that refused to die. Some became whales. Some became enormous predators. Some became the quiet, nocturnal rodents that would later evolve into things that think about metaphysics. Some became us. Evolution doesn't have intentions. It has contingencies. It hands out oddities and occasionally, by accident, hands out a solution. The mammalian revolution is the story of those solutions. Irregular, imperfect, but astonishingly resilient. And the irony, of course, is that our ability to reflect on this story comes from the very mess of cobbled-together parts evolution gave us. Never underestimate a warm-blooded underdog with time to kill. That is the short version. The long version is full of weird skulls, unlikely swims, and a lot of tiny mammals that simply refused to stop trying. Next, the blueprint for us. How the dumb luck of mutations stitched together the anatomy and instincts that would eventually become human. Keep listening. "4 billion years of trial and error, countless creatures born, adapted, and deleted. And out of that chaos, nature finally wrote something that could read itself. Pause. Us. The most complicated accident in history. Welcome to the blueprint for humanity, a story written entirely in typos that somehow make sense. Our design began long before we had thoughts to question it. Our bones? Recycled from fish fins that learned to crawl. Our lungs? Once belonged to amphibians who couldn't decide between air and water. Our jaws? A Frankenstein merger of gill arches and ancient cartilage. Our spine? A flexible tower designed for walking on 4 legs, still pretending it enjoys standing upright. Every piece of us is a compromise, an architectural disaster duct-taped by evolution and sold as intelligence. Somehow, it works. Mostly. The human body is not a masterpiece. It's a patchwork quilt of bad solutions that never got replaced. We choke on our own food because our airways and throats share a hallway. Our knees erode because we weren't supposed to jog upright on concrete. And our spines. Oh, our poor spines. They've been screaming since we stood up and never stopped. But evolution doesn't care about comfort. It only cares about survival long enough to make more discomfort. Our eyes, too, are fossils, built by creatures that hunted in the dark oceans 500 million years ago. They still carry the blind spots, the inverted wiring, the little flaws of their aquatic ancestors. Yet here we are, using those same imperfect lenses to stare at phone screens for 10 hours a day.
Design meant for love,
Same hardware,
high-act by
different
anxiety.
addiction.
Emotion was
Then came the
evolution's
real
greatest
glitch,
joke.
the emotional brain, a
design
tangle of
meant for
chemicals that
love,
once helped apes
hijacked
bond
by
and raise their young, now drives empires, heartbreak, religion, and existential dread. We invented art, war, therapy, and Tinder, all with the same wiring. Emotion was evolution's greatest joke. Because once we felt too much, we began to think too much. And that's when the universe realized it had made something dangerous, a creature that could imagine what it means to die. So the ape stood up, called itself wise, and started redesigning everything. We split atoms, conquered gravity, rewrote genetics, and filled the sky with noise. Nature built something that could question nature, and she hasn't had a quiet day since. We've been trying to perfect ourselves ever since, inventing gods, laws, governments, therapy, and skincare routines, all in an attempt to fix a design that was never finished. And every generation swears this time we've figured it out, only to hand the next generation a slightly different set of disasters. Because that's what we are, a species mid-debug. Evolution's open beta. And here we are, the sum of every flawed creature that somehow made it far enough to reproduce. We carry their ghosts in our genes, the crawling fish, the trembling primate, the predator that learned guilt. The perfect imperfection. The unfinished experiment that thinks it's the final product. If evolution has a sense of humor, we're the punchline. So next time you feel special, remember, you're just a self-aware mutation with Wi-Fi and anxiety. And somehow, that's beautiful. Because in this endless chaos, you are proof that even the universe's worst ideas can learn to love, laugh, and ask why. Congratulations, you're nature's favorite mistake. Our ancestors mutated to adapt. We mutate to escape. Plastic bodies, neural chips, digital immortality. Our future is less about survival and more about denial. We're not fighting nature anymore. We're fighting boredom. Evolution has become a content creator. So, what comes after us? Maybe the next mutation won't have blood or bones. Maybe it won't dream or love or fear. Maybe it won't need to. Maybe it'll simply look back at us and smile the way we smile at fossils. A little admiration and a quiet relief that it isn't us. But maybe, just maybe, that's the point. Every generation of life has been an echo of the one before it. Each species thinks it's the finale, but evolution, she never stops composing. And if she has one last verse left, it'll begin where we end, in the silence after our noise fades. Because maybe the last mutation is the one that finally learns to stop. So, what do you think? Did evolution end with us, or just take a coffee break? Either way, let's see what nature's sequel looks like. So, this is where the experiment ends. 4 billion years of chaos, luck, and very questionable decisions. And somehow, we're the final result. The creature that builds rockets, and then argues online about whether the Earth is flat. Maybe evolution didn't aim for perfection. Maybe it just wanted something that could wonder, something that could look up at the stars and ask, what comes next? Because maybe the last mutation isn't biological at all. Maybe it's curiosity. So, what do you think? Did evolution finish its masterpiece, or just take a coffee break? Either way, hit subscribe. Let's see what nature's sequel looks like.